Hey knitters, I have the weekend project for you. Let's make some Cocoa Dreams fingerless mitts. I'm Marley Bird, your By Crafty bestie. Let's go.
Show me love. This is all we got. Show me love.
Hello there friends and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, we will make the Cocoa Dreams fingerless mitts. Yes, I have two different colored mitts on here, but I wanted to show you what they look like in two different colorways. Let's go ahead and take a look at the materials I used to make these fingerless mitts. Right here, you can see two different colors of a worsted weight yarn. This is Knit Picks Brava Tweed, and it is a size 4 weight yarn. It is such a wonderful high-end acrylic yarn. Along with two different colors of yarn, you need two sets of double pointed needles, a set of 5 size 7 or 4.5mm needles, and a set of 5 size 8 or 5mm needles. On top of the needles, having a stitch marker or two is really handy. And then, of course, you need a tapestry needle to weave in all of those ends. Once you have those materials, the only thing left is that pattern. If you're following along with the VIP experience, you have the ad-free PDF already available to you inside of your module. So go ahead and download that PDF and follow along. If you want to follow the free version on the marleybird.com website, you're more than welcome to do that. Just remember, you do have to be a subscriber to the website. It is free. Once you log into that Grow program, the entire pattern will be presented to you on the blog, and you'll be able to view it from there. Now that we know the materials, we know where to get the pattern, let's get those size 7 needles and your color A and jump in to that cuff. To get started with the cuff, we want to do a long tail cast on directly onto 4 double pointed needles. I like to call this cast on the no cuss cast on, and here's how you do it. Go ahead and get yourself a nice length of yarn to accommodate the number of stitches you need for the long tail cast on, and then place a slip knot directly onto a double pointed needle. Once you've done that, we're going to cast on a set number of stitches onto one needle, and then we're going to transition to the next, to the next, to the next. So get your hands in position for the long tail cast on, and then work a series of stitches onto this needle using the long tail cast on. Knowing you will be casting onto 4 needles, take the total number of stitches you need to cast on and divide it by 4. That's a really great place to start to know how many stitches you should put on each needle. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and I'm going to do 10. Once I get 10 onto this needle, notice I have this nice edge right there. Grab your next needle, rest it right up along that edge, and then extend that second needle up, okay? See how it's not underneath either of these? This needle is on top of my yarn, okay? Position the yarn again into your hand to do the long tail cast on, only this time, as the yarn is coming from this loop here, from that needle, we will do the new cast on to the new needle. So when I do my cast on, I want to make sure that this new stitch gets right up next to the stitch that was the last one from the previous needle. We want those as close together as possible. Once you've done that, go ahead and continue putting the number of stitches you need onto that second needle. Once you have those on the second needle, we're going to do all of this again. Keep your needles in position. Keep them held like this in your hand. Grab your new needle, rest it up against the last needle that you did. So notice I'm going in this direction. So I have the new needle resting up right over here. It is on top of this yarn. It is not between it. It's on top. And we're going to cast on to the new needle, just like before. So I'm going to do the cast on, make sure that the very first stitch is right up next to that last one, and then get all of my stitches onto my third needle. All right, I have one more needle that I want to cast onto. So I'm holding my needles in position still, grab my last one, put it right up next to that third needle that I did. Again, position the yarn so that you can do the long tail cast on, casting onto the new needle. Make sure that first stitch is right down there close to that last stitch from the previous needle and get all of your stitches on there. All right, I have all of my stitches cast on for my fingerless mittens. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these needles and I'm just resting them down on my table just like so. And what needs to happen here is we want the very first stitch we have here to come around and meet the very last stitch that we have here. So that way we can begin knitting over here. Okay, so here's how I'm going to do it. First off, I have this tail remaining here and I don't need this huge long tail. So I'm just going to trim that up. Okay, and here is what you do. We're going to hold the very last needle that we did, and these 3 needles, we're going to swivel them around. And when we do that, this third needle, so this was the first one, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth. I'm holding number 4. I'm going to get 3, 2, and 1, and I'm just going to rotate them so that they are vertical, okay? Notice that needle number 3 is on top of needle number 4. Now I'm going to hold needle 3 in position and I'm going to rotate 2 and 1. And when I do that, I'm going just like so. So I rotated. Now my needle 2 is on top of my needle 3. Very last one, I'm holding needle 2 and needle 1 I'm going to rotate. Again, I want to make sure needle 1 is rotated just like so, and needle 1 is on top of needle 2. Can you see that? Now, hopefully you can see this on yours, but when you do the long tail cast on, you have this really nice ridge that's created by the long tail cast on. And so when you do the long tail cast on and you get that ridge, you can easily look at when your needles are positioned like this. Make sure that ridge is all on the inside of these needles, just like so. Nothing is twisted at these needle joins. And so you know that when it's time to work in the round here, nothing is twisted and you're ready to begin working in the round. This is the point that we will begin knitting, right? So I'm just going to kind of maneuver this so that it's more of a diamond instead of a square. This is my working yarn. My working yarn is coming off of the last needle I used, and I want to make sure that yarn is inside of this diamond here, okay? It's not on the outside, it's on the inside. It's at this point I will begin knitting this first stitch right here from my needle 1 with the yarn coming from the last stitch on my needle 2. And just by the action of knitting, we're going to join this stitch to that stitch, and our goal is to make it look just like this, make it look like it's virtually seamless, okay? So to do that, you grab your 5th needle, and I'm going to leave these on the table as best I can. I grab my 5th needle, I push my needle 1 back into position here, okay? I grasp my yarn so that everything is in position. I take my 5th needle, I go over here just like so. I'm going to go into that first stitch like I'm going to knit it. Okay. And now I literally knit it. And I pull it out and off of my needle 1. Now it's at this point that we need to make sure that this new stitch we just created is butting up really close to the last stitch that we created right there on needle 4. So it's at this point, this yarn here, you're going to give it a nice tug And what that is going to do is tighten up that stitch onto this needle, and it's going to really get it close to that last stitch there. And you're going to do that every time you switch to a new needle, and it's going to make it so that you don't get any sort of a ladder. Now we are working a 1x1 rib, so I'm going to move my yarn to the front, and I'm going to immediately jump into a purl stitch. Move my yarn to the back and go to a knit stitch. Move my yarn to the front and go to a purl stitch. Now, it's at this point, I don't have to worry about all of these stitches on my other needles. They're just hanging out there, okay? They aren't doing anything special. They're literally just hanging out there until it's time for me to get to them to knit them. And as long as I'm not, twirling my hand around, they should just stay in place, and I'm not worried about them getting twisted or anything. My join is already created. I am working in the round now. This is no different than if I was working on circular needles and I just joined to work in the round. When I do that, all of these stitches are just on a cord. Now they're just resting on some needles. I don't have to worry about them falling off or anything like that. I don't have to put stoppers on them. Everything is good. So I'm going to work my 1x1 rib all the way down my needle 1. And I literally am just ignoring, like this needle right here, I'm just ignoring it. I am pretending like it's not there, even though it's kind of dangling around. I'm just pretending it's not there because it's literally just hanging out there holding stitches. When you get to the end of your needle, you'll now have a spare needle. And what you will do is what I do, the next needle I'm going to use is right over here to the right. I'm sorry, this is the left. It's over here to the left. I put that needle on top of the needle I just finished. I position the needle I just finished so that the stitches are in the middle. And then if you think of this as clockwise, I rotate clockwise. Okay, so like this was 12 o'clock, I rotate clockwise. Push the new needles. This was my needle 2. I push it back down so that I'm closer to the tip. Now, just like before, my yarn is coming off of the last stitch from the previous needle, and I'm going to knit the first stitch on the next needle with the yarn coming from over there. So when I do that, I go into knit, yarn over, pull out the yarn over, come up, and I'm going to give it a nice tug. It should be tight enough that if you let go of this needle, it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, that stitch doesn't go anywhere. Now we're going to purl the next stitch, and then knit, and then purl, and then knit, so on and so forth, all the way down this row. I'm going to keep going. Get to the end. Here's my spare needle. This is the next needle I'm going to be working with, so I put it on top of the needle I just finished. Move the needle I just finished so that the stitches are in the middle. Rotate clockwise. Push the new needle down into position, and I begin knitting. Now, I am obviously knitting continental, but this also works if you want to knit English style. If I have my yarn over here in the other hand, I'm going to go into that stitch and knit it. And then as it comes off, I really want to give that yarn a nice tug, and that's going to tighten that stitch up, okay? Then bring your yarn in front and purl the next stitch. Now, mind you, I do not typically knit English style, so I'm doing the best I can. You probably are a better English style knitter than I am. Bring your yarn back to the back, knit the next one. Bring your yarn back to the front, purl the next one, bring your yarn back to the back, and knit the next one, so on and so forth. As you're working this ribbing, I do want to point out that make sure you are wrapping your yarn over top of your right hand needle, okay? If you are wrapping it the other direction, it's not that it's wrong, it's just it will seat your stitches the opposite way on your needle. And so if you don't knit them through the back leg on the following round, you will actually get twisted stitches. So you Want to make sure that you are prepared for that if that is your intention. Otherwise, if you always wrap it the way I am, you won't have any sort of an issue. But you do what works for you. Just we don't want twisted stitches here. So if you have twisted stitches, you want to make sure you get those corrected. So I'm to the end of the row. My spare needle is here. This is going to be my new needle I'm working on too. So I pop it on top of the one I just finished. Move the yarn or the needle I just finished down to where the stitches are in the middle. Rotate clockwise, and I begin again. Okay. My yarn is coming off of that needle, that stitch right there on this needle, right? So I have it back here. I'm going to knit the first one. And remember, after you knit this first one here, you want to make sure you really give that yarn a nice tug, okay? You really want it to be nice and tight. And then you're going to purl the next stitch. Like I said, go over top and purl. Your yarn between the needles back to the back and knit. Okay, see that? Back to the front and purl. Back to the back and knit. I'm going to switch hands here because I'm much faster with the other side. So when I get to the end, believe it or not, we are to the end, and you know that because the tail is right there, so you're ready to go. When you get back to the end, your tail is there. You will knit or purl that last stitch, and this is what it looks like, okay? So if I were to set this down, everything is still in that nice square, right? Everything is still in that nice square. There's nothing twisted at those joins, and all of my joins are still nice and snug. Like it looks as if this stitch is just an extension of that stitch. There's not any extra slack there or anything, okay? Like if I were to break this in the middle and extend these out to be a straight line, it would look like one stitch next to the next without any sort of slack. And that's your goal here, okay? So we're going to continue working this ribbing in this manner, okay? We're going to work this ribbing in this manner until your cuff measures the distance in the pattern. Now, if you joined me for the Falling Leaves Mosaic hat, where we had to knit 5 inches for the doubled cuff, you know what a slog it can be doing that ribbing. Luckily, the ribbing for this fingerless mitt is only 2 to 3 inches. So depending on what size you're making, you can absolutely accomplish 2 to 3 inches. So what I want you to do now is continue on working this 1x1 ribbing until your cuff is 2 to 3 inches or as long as you want it to be. Sound like a plan? Go ahead, hit pause on this video, and then when you reach that distance, come back here and we'll move on to the mosaic portion in the round on our double points. Let's go. And welcome back. How did that go? Not nearly as long as the 5 inches on the Falling Leaves hat, right? Okay, let's go ahead, take a look down here and move on to the next step. Okay, right here is my 3-inch cuff. It looks really nice and neat. You can see it has a lot of stretch to it, and at the same time, all of my stitches are still really nice and close together, right? Nothing is really spaced out. It's at this point we are going to transition over to our larger double pointed needles, and we will work the first round of our mosaic pattern, which is round 1, which is just our color A knitting all the way around. To knit onto our larger needles, remember we're going to use our size 8 needles now, or 5mm. Just take one of the needles and begin knitting with that. So I'm going to take one of the needles, again, always pull that first one really nice and tight here at the beginning. When we get to the mosaic portion, we're going to have to fiddle with that a little bit because we don't want those to be too tight with the float. But you don't want them to also be too loose to where you get ladders in your work. Once you get all of the stitches transferred over to the larger needles, and notice I'm not slipping them onto the new needle. I am literally knitting them onto the new needle. and this will get all of them onto my size 8s. And as I work the body of my mitten, I am going to work them on my size 8s. So that works great. Each one goes around, same process. And now that you have some ribbing in action, and you have some actual material, some fabric flowing down from your needles, it's probably a lot easier to work these double pointed needles. At least I find it easier to do so. Remember, you always want this work to be flowing down. You should never have it going up, and it should always be close to you. It should never be over here. I should not be knitting over here with my stitches on hold here. I should always have my work closest to me. All right, let's get to these last stitches here. Okay, when we get all of our stitches onto the larger needle, it's then that we are going to transition into our mosaic stitch pattern. Our stitch pattern is a multiple of 8. So the number of stitches you cast on is a multiple of 8. So if you are looking at the chart or you're following along with the instructions for the size you are making, you are going to begin working the mosaic pattern around starting with round 2. What's important to note at this point in time is if you're following the free pattern, you do want to make sure you are paying attention to the written instructions, because if you are working on the child size, you have to begin your thumb gusset prep on round 2. If you're working the small medium or the large extra large mitten, you begin your gusset prep on rounds 8. So you have to make sure that you are preparing for those gusset stitches. So make sure you are following along with the written instructions, even though that chart really is helpful to visually see how those stitches should play out on your actual work. First thing we're going to do is introduce our new color. So we're going to introduce our color B. So when we go into our very first stitch here, we will knit with our color B and literally drop our color A. And we just start knitting with our color B. Make sure you don't accidentally knit with your tail, and at the same time make sure you leave a nice long tail. All right, if you don't leave a nice long tail, it's hard to weave in your ends at the end. So for this pattern, you knit the first 2, and then we're going to slip one. So to slip one, you go in as if to purl and literally slip it off. Okay. And then we're going to knit 3 stitches. So knit 1, 2, 3, and then slip one. And then knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Get my third one here. And then slip one. Now I'm at the end of my needle, so my first stitch over here is going to be my slip one. So I will position my needles correctly, rotate, and this very first stitch is going to be a slip one. So I go in as if to purl and I slip it. Now this is where it's tricky because we're so used to pulling this yarn really tight to connect this stitch to that stitch. But now, because we slipped that first stitch there, when we go to knit this stitch, we have to have a float. Okay, can you see that float? So we don't want those to butt up together, otherwise we're going to have some major puckering. We want to make sure that we keep that float in action. So as I knit this stitch, I just kind of pause here, make sure my stitches look good, make sure my float's not too tight, and I just am mindful of the tension that I am giving my stitches. And I carry on with my stitch pattern. So I would knit 3 and then slip one, knit 3, and then slip one. Okay, I'm going to work this all with my yarn in my left hand now. So I slipped one, now I'm going to knit 3, so that's knit 1, rotate, this is 2. Now this one, I can make sure these are nice and close because there's not a float there, right? It's a stitch next to a stitch. And then here's 3. Then I slip one. 1, 2, 3, slip 1, 1, 2, 3, transition. As I rotate, the first stitch over here is going to be a slip. So again, I'm going to go in as if to purl and slip it. But as I knit the next stitch, I want to make sure that I'm keeping that float not too loose and not too tight. Just want to make sure that it's just a nice consistent float back there, okay? And that is really the hardest part about doing the mosaic stitches with the double points, is when you have to transition from one needle to the next and have those floats take place, okay? When you get to the end of the round, it's totally okay if that last stitch is a little loose. All you're gonna do is you're just gonna tug on your working yarn a little bit from the other color and it'll tighten it up. But remember, for the knitting mosaic, we want to knit 2 rounds with the same color. So the next round is just like this one. So if you don't have the pattern in front of you, you're literally going to knit the same color stitches that is the yarn you're using and slip the opposite. So right here, I have a stitch there and a stitch here. So this one I can keep nice and snug, right? I can keep that one snug and then knit that one and then slip and then just continue on. And like I said, I am just going to be very mindful about my float as I transition from one needle to the next when that first stitch on the next needle is the slipped. And then I knit that next one, make sure that my float is not too tight, not too loose, keep it very nice and consistent. That's good right there. And then continue on. Okay, this is just one of those things you have to feel your way through. Okay, and just keep going. So this is round 2. If I was working on the child size, I would be doing my prep for my thumb gusset, but I'm actually working on the small medium size. So my thumb gusset prep doesn't begin until round 8. So I am going to continue working my mosaic pattern just like this, following along with the written instructions or the chart, whatever works. And I will do that all the way until I get to round 8, which is where I have to introduce stitch markers to help me with my gusset placement, okay? So let's just kind of work through the next couple rounds together as well. So that was round 3, right? So round 1 was all with color A. Round 2 and 3 was with my color B. Now I'm going to continue on and I'm going back to my color A. So I drop my color B. I pick up my color A, which is just from, 2 rows below. I pick it up, make sure my B is out of the way, and I continue on. Now, if you remember when I was working with my colors before, I like to take my old color and cross it over top of my new color. So I'm going to continue to do that. So this is my color B. I'm going to make it go over top. See how it goes over top of my color A. So that way, as I continue here, it'll get a nice twist on the inside of my fingerless mitt. All right, so it went over top, so it crosses over right there, and then I continue on. All right, so I'm going to continue on with round 4. So round 4 has me start off with 3 knits. So 1, 2, and 3. And I'm just holding those tails just to kind of give myself some tension. You don't have to do that. So I knit 3, and then I slip 1, I knit 1, I slip 1, and I knit 2. That's my 8 stitch repeat. Okay, then I continue on. So I will knit 3, 1, 2, and to the end of the needle, right? And I come over here to 3. I don't have to worry about the float for this one, right? Because it goes from that stitch to that one. Then I slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 2, 3, 4, 5, slip 1, knit 1. Now there's a float there, so I'm going to be careful, right? Because I slipped that stitch right there, so I'm going from that stitch there over to here. So I want to make sure that that floats, not too tight. So I slipped one, knit one, and I slip one. Now I knit 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip one, knit one, slip one. See here, I'm going to knit 5. Remember, so I slipped that one. My yarn's going to come from there over here. So I have a float. I've got to pay attention. Again, just be mindful of that float. Make sure it's not too tight or too loose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip one, knit one, slip one, knit 2. And that brings me to the end of my round. Okay. Now I know that my needles, they're gonna get caught in this just a little bit. I'm just careful and just kind of just keep moving them out of the way. All right. So here we go. I'm gonna do one more round with the same yarn, same sequence. It's round 5. So I knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip, knit, slip, and then I end up knitting 5, 2, 3, 4. Always rotate, and 5, slip, knit, slip, knit 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip. This first one over here is going to be knit, so you want to be very mindful of that float. So I knit. Again, that float looks pretty good there. It's not too tight. And then I slip, and then again, that float is going over that pink there as well. It's very consistent. As long as you're consistent here and you don't pull those floats too tight, you're going to get a really nice fitting fingerless mitt, okay? Just be very consistent with those floats. You want to make sure you're not pulling them too tight. And here's another one. I want to make sure that float, as it goes from that stitch there over here, that it is the same sort of tension as everything else I've been doing. Slip, knit, slip, and then knit 2. And I'm back to the start of my round. How do I know? Because the start of my round, there's my cord right there, right? That's my tail. So every time I get back to where the start of my round is, my tail will also be there. And when I get to the start of my round, once again, old over new. Make sure you don't get the tail. So you're going to grab the pink yarn. So there's my old. So the color A brown is over top of the pink. And I continue on with my pink here. Okay. So this would be rounds 6 and 7. Okay. Rounds 6 and 7. Get this all good here. I know it's going to feel a little bit awkward, but you can do this, I promise. All right, round 6, we start off immediately with a slip stitch. So we slip 1, then we knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, 2, 3. Start off with our slip 1 again as I rotate through, right? So we slip 1, knit 1. Again, making sure I'm really mindful about my float. 1, 2, 3, slip 1, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, 2, 3, slip 1, 1, 2, 3, slip 1, 1, 2, and 3. That's the end of round 6. I'm going to get round 7 complete. So as we know, round 7 is just like round 6, so I can look at the color of my stitches and know whether it's a slip or a knit. Make sure you're paying attention to those floats and work all the way around, just like you did for round 7, or just like you did for round 6 on round 7. English, Marlena. Let's do this properly. Alrighty. Slip. Get through here. Those of you who worked on the falling leaves hat are probably very familiar with this stitch pattern. The trickiest part you will have is just finagling the double points, but once you get, several rounds into it, probably by this round here, it becomes a lot easier, I think, with the mosaic. It's definitely something you have to be patient with yourself on, but just remember, it's just sticks and string. All right, so we have worked rounds 1 through 7, and we're ready to transition now to round 8. As I mentioned before, on round 8, that's when we have to do the thumb gusset prep if you're making the small, medium, or the large, extra large. You would have done this thumb gusset prep on round 2 if you were making the child size. So what I want to do now is I'm going to do the thumb gusset prep. Now, unlike the crochet version of this pattern, we don't have to worry about left hand or right hand because we have the mosaic stitch pattern going all the way around the hand. There isn't a top of the hand and the palm of the hand. So we are going to make both of the mittens we are creating the exact same way. We don't have to change the placement of our thumb gusset. So what we are going to do is work across a set number of stitches, and then we are going to place markers so that way we know where we want to work our thumb gusset. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into action. Follow along with the written instructions for the size you are making, or if you are part of the VIP experience and want to follow along with the full chart that is available to you in the ad-free PDF, please go ahead and do that. You'll notice that the thumb gusset stitches are the ones that are in light blue, okay? But this is the prep round. So this round, we're just going to get the prep going. All right. Okay, round 8, we're back to color A. So I'm doing old over new. So I'm doing old over new to get my colors all in play. And then I like to just put that underneath, just tuck it back over there to that side. Okay, so I have my color A in my hand ready to work. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work my round 8 chart. So I knit 1, slip 1, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, knit, oh, sorry, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. And then I'm going to knit 1. Now it's at this point I'm going to place a marker. So I'm going to grab a marker and place it directly onto my needle. And then I knit 1 stitch. That 1 stitch is now going to be the base of my thumb gusset. And then I place a second marker. Okay. What will happen is when we're on increase rows, we're going to work make ones on either side of these markers. It's going to be one on the inside and one on the inside over here. Okay. Once your markers are in place, you carry on with your pattern. So you'll notice that in the written instructions, this is where you have a star. So you will knit 3, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 2, right? Those are your 8 stitches for the repeat. So then you repeat from star. So you will knit 3, 1, 2, 3, slip one, knit one, slip one, knit two, then repeat from star. So knit three, so 1, 2, 3, slip one, knit one, slip one, knit two, then you repeat from star, so you'll knit three, slip one, right there, you slip one, and you're at the end of your round. Okay, you're at the end of your round. I can tighten up my pink a little bit there just to keep it a little bit snug. I'm now ready to move on to round 9. And for the size I'm working, that is an increase round. So we're going to do a make one. And we're going to do those make ones right after the marker and then right before the second marker. So whenever you're doing the thumb gusset and you're on an increase round, this is exactly how you're going to do these make ones, all right? Once you can do this round, you can continue on working the thumb gusset stitches as long as you're following the pattern without any problem. You're gradually increasing your thumb gusset by 2 stitches every time you work an increase round. And our ultimate goal here is to get the total number of stitches we need to work around the circumference of our thumb. All right, so let's go ahead and work round 9. We are still using color A, so we are going to work our stitches for round 9 with our color A. And the convenient thing here is that it's all the stitches of the same color are knit, stitches of the opposite color are slipped. So I don't really have to think too much about it. Where I have to start thinking is when I get over here to where my markers are. Now, I am not going to keep mosaic stitches in between those markers. I'm just going to keep them knit. So I slipped that one. I'm going to knit this one, make sure my float is not too tight. Slip my marker, and then here's how I'm going to do my increase. Here's my bar. I just scoop up that bar, put it on my left-hand needle, and then I knit it through the back leg, just like so, and you get an increase. Now what you're going to notice, if you do that increase there, it looks like it leans to the left. All right, so that's when we scoop up the bar like this. Okay, so if you scoop up from front to back, and then you knit through the back leg, okay, you knit through the back leg, you get this stitch right there. It looks like it leans to the left. If you want that stitch to look like it leans to the right, scoop from back to front and then knit through the front leg. See how it's the harder one to get into? So you knit through the front leg. And what you'll notice there is it looks like that leans to the right. You could choose whatever one you want to do. You could do them both the same. It really doesn't matter. But you'll increase one, knit that stitch right there till you get to the next marker. And then we want to increase the stitch right here before this marker. Then we slip our marker and then we carry on. So if you're looking at the chart for the VIPers, you'll notice that this stitch right here, as represented in the chart, is just a blue square with an M. And so you will do whatever you're supposed to do between your markers here whenever you come across that stitch on the chart. And then once you get done with those and you slip your marker, you're ready to carry on to the next stitch on the chart. Okay, so what we will do is we will knit 3. So 1, 2, 3, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 2, right? Because it's the same thing. And we just get to the end of the round. And what we've done here is we've increased 2 stitches at the thumb gusset. And that thumb gusset will become essentially like a pocket for your thumb. So that way you can have essentially this meatiness right here of your hand fit properly into your mitten. Let me finish this round. I'm going to pull a sample mitten in so that I can show you what is happening here. But I want to finish this round so that way I can show you properly. All right, so I finished my round 9. I'm going to set this down and let me go ahead and grab a finished sample here. Obviously, this is the cuff that we've completed. We've already gone into our mosaic stitches. And then this is the thumb gusset. This is what we are creating. So what this is, it starts off with one stitch. And then if markers were on either side of this, that's where we have done our increase on either side of the markers, right? If there was a marker there, we did one here and one here. And then we would work around even, and then another increase, and then maybe in round even. You're going to follow along with what the thumb gusset pattern tells you to do. But what we're essentially doing, we're increasing the number of stitches between the markers here, okay? And some rounds will be an increase round, some rounds will be just an even round where you're just going to be knitting, you're not doing any increasing. And what we're doing is we're creating this pocket here for our thumb, and we're getting some extra length here in the gusset region to accommodate this length here of our hand. And when all is said and done, all of the stitches that we're creating, we will put on some scrap yarn, and then we will cast on a stitch right here to make up for the one stitch we used down here. So when we get to this point, we're back to our original cast on number. And the reason we're using the gusset stitches for the thumb, you can see how well that fits on the hand. You see how well that fits on the hand? So those gusset stitches are really nice and neat. It gives you this extra width here of the hand, and it just feels really nice. All right, so this is what we're creating between our markers. All right, we're going to create this. Notice it's not mosaic. You're just going to knit those stitches. You're not doing any sort of special finishing. So what you need to do now is carry on with your stitch pattern. No matter what size you are making, whether it's the child, the small medium, or the large extra large, continue on following the instructions all the way through your thumb gusset. Then what I want you to do is I want you to join me back here when you get to the end of your thumb gusset, and I want to show you how to put all of those thumb gusset stitches on a holder, how you will add that extra stitch so that way you can make up for the stitch we used to start our thumb gusset, and then we will continue on with the top of our hand. The thing here is I don't really care what round you're going to be on because all of us will be on different rounds depending on what size you're making. I'm more concerned about the process of putting those stitches from the thumb gusset onto a holder and showing you how to cast on that extra stitch. I don't care what the mosaic pattern is on that round. I just want you to learn those two acts because by that point, you know the mosaic pattern. You know whatever round you're on that you just follow the mosaic pattern. But we do need to learn what we're going to do with those thumb gusset stitches. So hit pause, work on your pattern right now, get all the way through your gusset stitches. Join me back here when you reach the end, and I will show you how to put those stitches on a holder, how to cast on a stitch, and then carry on for the top of your hand. All right? Hey, welcome back. Did you finish those gusset stitches? By this point, you should either be ready to start round 15 if you're making the child, round 27 if you're making the small medium, or round 31 if you're making the large extra large. I am making the small medium, so I'm on round 27, and I've worked over to my stitch marker. Let's go ahead and take a look. Like I said, I'm on round 27, and I've worked over to my stitch marker for my gusset. My gusset stitches are nice and created right here, but now it's time to take all of the stitches between these markers and put them on a holder. So my stitch before my marker is a slip stitch, so I'm just going to set that down. I'm going to remove my marker, and I'm going to take a length of yarn, put it on a tapestry needle, and I'm going to use this to hold all of my live stitches. So I'm going to come over here, and all of the stitches that I have, I'll put that back in a second. All of the stitches that I have between those markers, I'm going into each one as if to purl, okay, each one as if to purl, and then just slipping it right off. And then I'm going to thread that yarn through all of those, okay? I'm to the other marker, so I remove that marker. And this here, see, all of those stitches are now, they're now on a holder. So what I like to do is I take the ends of my yarn here and I just tie a little knot. So that way I don't accidentally pull one of these ends and pull those stitches out, okay? Just let them be, just tuck them in because they're just gonna remain there, okay? Now it's at this point, we're going to cast on one stitch, all right? So we're gonna cast on one stitch. You literally can just do a backwards E. So grab your yarn like you did when you did the long tail cast on and scoop up like so. And you are going to just go from the base of your thumb up and scoop up. And then I'm going to tell you to then take this and just give it one more twist before you put it on. Okay. That will give you that extra stitch. And then you simply skip all of these, right? So now we have that extra stitch on there and we continue on with our pattern. So I would go ahead, I would knit these 2 stitches, slip one, and then for me on round 27, this is where I am, okay? I just leave all those stitches just like that. And when it's time to come back and work the thumb, I'll put all of these stitches back on some needles and I'll work the thumb to give myself a taller thumb. But it's at this point, I go ahead and I'm going to continue finishing my round 27. For you, if you're on one of the other rounds, you'll finish that round. And then you continue on working even without any increases in your mosaic stitch pattern until your fingerless mitten reaches the distance you want it to. Okay, so if you're gonna deviate from the pattern, make sure you measure it, know exactly what row you end on. So when you make the second one, you can end on the same row. You could follow the pattern exactly the way I have written and do the exact number of rounds I have written in the pattern. The biggest thing is you want to finish after you have worked a round with color B, all right? Finish after you've worked around with color B, because when we get to the end, we're actually going to go back to color A and work one by one ribbing again. It's very easy to do. You can see here that I finished right there with a color B and then I jumped right into one by one ribbing and I used my smaller needles to do that. So just like I used my smaller needles there, I used my smaller needles up here and I just did just a little section of ribbing, right? And once that was all done, I bound it off in pattern. And then that's when you come over here and you continue on working your sequence that you're working over here. And you work a few rounds of just stockinette here. And then you go into the ribbing over here. So it's quite easy. So this is where you are. I need you to go ahead and work this portion for the hand of your fingerless mittens. And then once you have gotten to the point where you feel like your mittens are about 1 inch shorter than where you really want them to be, that's when we will use our color A and our smaller needles and work one by one ribbing. So what I need you to do right now is go ahead and get those stitches on a holder for the thumb and continue on working in your pattern. Get up to where the ribbing is supposed to begin. Join me back here. I'll walk you through the ribbing and how to do that bind off, and then we'll go finish the thumb and your mitten is done. Like, it's that easy. All right, so hit pause and I'll see you when you get back. Hello and welcome back. Are you done with all of your fingerless mitt up to the finger cuff? Good. That's where I need you to be. Let's take a look right down here. I have completed my fingerless mitt all the way up to the very last round. So I just finished with a color B. Now I'm going to knit one full round with color A, just knitting a round. But I can cut my color B at this point. So I'm going to leave a nice long tail and cut my color B, and I'm just going to let that be. And I will work one full round with my color A, and this round I'm just knitting. All right, this is going to prep my work essentially for jumping into that knit one, purl one ribbing for the finger cuff. Okay, so let's get around. Your final round before you work into the finger cuff is one round with color A. right? So we finished with color B on the mosaic portion. Now we're doing one full knit round with our color A. This really just kind of ties it all together so we can jump into the ribbing without having any color bleeds. So that's why I have you working this round of just plain knit with the same color we will be doing our finger cuff with. And honestly, I don't know if finger cuff is the right term for what we're making, but I was like, that's as close as I can think of what this portion of the fingerless mitt is. So I called it a finger cuff. I know that sounds really funny, and the thumb cuff, but you get what I'm saying, right? All right. So I'm coming up to the end, and it is at this point I'm going to switch over to my smaller needles. So just like when we jump to our larger needles, we're going to knit all of our stitches onto our smaller needle, okay? So I'm going to just jump into my ribbing pattern, but I'm going to use my smaller needle. So the first stitch here is a knit and then purl. Again, make sure that these stitches are nice and close, okay? And you're just going to do your knit one, purl one, ribbing all the way around, just like we did when we began. Big trick here is make sure that your join is nice and snug as you go from one needle to the next. So I finished with the purl, so I'll start with a knit, make sure that's nice and snug, and then jump into your ribbing. So I got this done in no time, which was delightful. All right, so I'm at the end of my round. Here we are. And I now am on all of my size 7 needles. I've started my ribbing, and I work this for a total of 4 rounds. So that's 1 round. Now we got to do 3 more. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 more rounds of my ribbing. You do the same, and then we will bind off in pattern. Okay, I am coming up to the last few stitches of my 4th round. And the next round is a bind off round in pattern. So it's literally just as it sounds. We're going to work our established pattern here of our knit one, purl one, and we will bind off as we get 2 stitches onto our right needle. So I will knit the first stitch, purl the next stitch, have the front or the back stitch jump the front stitch. The next stitch in line here is a knit, so I'll knit it, have the back stitch jump the front. Next stitch over here is a purl, so I purl it, back, jump the front. Next stitch is a knit, so I knit, back, jump the front. Next is a purl, so I purl, back, jump the front. You see how this goes. As long as you are not tugging extra when you jump that stitch right there, don't pull on your yarn extra at that point, okay, because that'll make your bind offs too tight. As long as you keep your bind offs the same size as your actual needle, you won't end up with bind offs that are too tight. And then as you just noticed, you'll get down to where you'll have an empty needle and you'll just set it aside because we are, binding off these stitches. So all of these needles are going to end up becoming free, or they will all end up empty. We're going to do this all the way around. If it's a knit, knit it. If it's a purl, purl it. And then once you get 2 stitches on the right hand needle, back stitch jumps the front, just like any other bind off, okay? All right, last needle here. What's really great about this particular bind off and dropping down our needle size is it's hopefully going to prevent our ribbing here at the top of our fingers from flaring. It helps prevent that from flaring. And it's just a nice little way to finish off your mitten. Now, if you wanted to turn these into full-blown mittens, you could continue working your mosaic stitch pattern and get up to, about an inch or so before you hit the top of your hand, and then work a series of decreases to get down to a set number of stitches and, shape the top if you want to, like the toe of a sock. But that's totally up to you. Okay, I'm to the end here. I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving my tail a little bit long so that way I can use it to weave in, right? So here I just pull this out. I'm going to put this using my tapestry needle. Come over here. I'm just going to go right underneath those and pop over, then come back over here and pop down into that one. Looks like it's a seamless join, right? And then you come down here and weave in your tail so that it doesn't come undone. Make sure it's nice and secure, because these mittens, as you're wearing them and such, like they will they get a lot of use. So you definitely want to make sure you weave in your tail securely. You could even bury your tail in if you want to use a chenille needle and bury in your tail, which is a really great idea, especially as we're using this acrylic yarn. I'm just going to pop it down one more to make sure it's nice and secure. There we go. I can cut that. I would go ahead and tuck in all the ones on the inside as well, but you can see there that finishing there of the finger cuff, it looks really nice. It looks really nice. And you compare that to the loveliness of the mosaic. I don't have any puckering. Everything looks really great. And at this point, I should be able to put it on. So I'm going to stick my hand in it. Oh, it's just like perfection. I love it. So pretty. Okay, so we finished the fingerless mitten part, but now we have the thumb. So as we continue on with the thumb, we want to maintain our sequence of one color every 2 rows, right? And we will pick up all of these stitches that are on a holder here. We will pick up one stitch right here where we cast on stitches. And then we will work in the round, working our pattern, right? So like I finished off here with my color B. I'll do my first round with color B, and then I will jump to color A for 2 rounds, color B for 2 rounds, and then color A one more time. And then I jump to my finger cuff. Now, I'm going to mention, if you wanted to, you could jump right to ribbing right now. Like we could come here, pick up all these stitches with color B, and then do a knit round and then jump right to our finger cuff. Like you could go right away if you want to. It's totally up to you. Just whatever you're going to do, you want to make sure you keep it consistent with both of the mittens. So let's go ahead. We want to pick up the stitches that are on a holder for this thumb. And for this, you want to use your larger needles again. Okay, you want to go back to your larger needles. Let's do that now. First thing we want to do is we will be using our larger needles, and we're going to place all of these stitches as evenly spaced as possible around 3 double points. All right, so I'm just going to grab 3 double points, and I'm going to place these stitches directly onto my double points. I am not going to remove the string that's holding the stitches because I'm going to let it act as a lifeline. So that way, if something should mess up and I need to rip back, I have a holder in place so that way my entire mitten is not just absolutely destroyed, right? All right, so if you remember right here, this is our cast on right here, okay? And so I'm just going to pick up a stitch here. Let's just pick up a stitch here. And that's where we will begin our work. Okay, so I'm going to pick up that stitch and I'm going to put it onto that needle right there. Okay. All right. All right. So we want to continue our sequence. So we will use our color B to begin with here. Use our color B, and we will just knit all the way around. So I'm going to start here in the stitch that I picked up, and I'm not worried about any holes. Okay, I'm not worried about any holes or anything at the join point because I can use my tail to weave close any holes. Okay, so I am not concerned about that. I'm just going to knit around here, and I'm just using my larger needles, working in stockinette, making sure I don't work through the lifeline that I'm keeping in place. Just let it sit there. Just ignore it as you're working all the stitches. All right. Now we're over here. We have to join at this point, right? This is where we're joining to work in the round right here. And we have to change colors. So you want to change colors right here. And to make this work, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my color A and I'm going to tie it onto my color B, literally just tying it onto there. And then I pull that right up close to the needle. Okay. Right up close to the needle. So now when I go to knit, this stitch here, let me get the tail out of the way. This stitch is going to bring these together. All right, let me show you what I mean. So I'm gonna just hold this out of the way. So now my color A is attached to my color B. So when I come into this stitch and knit it, it will pull that last needle I was working into up close to the new needle I'm working into. Let me show you. You can see right here that now everything is kind of joined into a triangle. All right. I know it's a little confusing with all these tails sticking around. So if you wanted to pull the tails to the inside, you could do that. So I'm trying to do right here. Let's pull the tails to the inside. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do 2 rounds with my color A here. Just knit rounds, not doing any sort of shaping or anything like that. I just finished my 2 rounds with my color A, so it's time to switch colors again, right? So I will grab my color B here. Remember, old over new, so you kind of have to do some maneuvering, possibly, to make sure the yarn twists around each other like we want. Here we go. Old over new. And I'm on color B, so I'm going to do 2 rounds with my color B. Okay, 2 rounds with my color B. And that completes 2 rounds with my color B. I now only need to do 1 round with my color A, which means my color B is complete. So I'm going to go ahead, cut my color B. I'm leaving this tail nice and long, just like I said, so that way if I want to use it to seam up any holes, I can do that. So I'm tucking that in there. I'm going to tuck the other tail of my color A in there. And now I'm ready to continue on working 1 round with my color A here. So 1 round with my color A. Keep it real simple, just knitting. And then we jump to the finger cuff, or not the finger cuff, the thumb cuff. And the thumb cuff just consists of 3 rounds of knit 1 purl 1 ribbing. That's all it is. Okay. So it's like the finger cuff, but it's for the thumb and it's just 3 rounds. You could do more if you wanted. You could do less if you wanted. You could do whatever you want to do. You could even close the thumb up if you want by doing like a rapid decrease and then closing it like a drawstring, like you would do on the top of a hat. That would be fine as well. All right. Okay. So I have worked the 1 round. Like I said, I'm not concerned about any of these holes that you're seeing right here, because once I pull all my tails and pull everything in place, it's going to look much better. So I'm not stressed about that right now, okay? But I do want to go ahead and I'm going to jump into my knit 1 purl 1 ribbing. Okay, now I'm ready to bind off in pattern, which you know how to do because it's the same thing we did for the finger cuff. We're just doing it for the thumb now. Again, make sure you are not giving any extra tug when you have that back stitch, jump the front stitch. Otherwise, your bind off will be too tight and your thumb will not fit in there very nicely. Okay. Just work in pattern. Work all the way around. Here you go. End of the round. Make sure I cut my yarn, leave a nice long tail. Can pull that out. Take my tapestry needle. I'll go ahead and get this top part woven in. Okay. Come over here, go underneath the top of that stitch. Come back over here and go down that one. Get a nice seamless. Okay, I'm not going to weave this in yet because you can see right there I need to pull that snug. So I'm going to just let that kind of hang out here. And then it's at this point I can remove my lifeline. Just snip it, pull that out. Okay, you can see I have some little gaping holes, but we're going to pull all of our tails. Let's turn it inside out. It'll be easier if we do that. Everything inside out. And we're going to pull on the tails to tighten everything up. And then we can use these tails to essentially duplicate stitch around here so we don't have that hole. So I'm going to use this tail here and I'm going to come around this and close this up. Okay, so we'll thread this on here. Stick my finger into that thumb hole and we're going to pop this underneath here. And let's see here. Let's come up here, down here, and I'm going to come through here and come back over here. So I'm trying to duplicate stitch, kind of pull this all together. Okay. Give myself a nice closure here. Let's go through that and then come through here. And ta-da, I close that up. Okay, I still have this one over here as well on the other side, so I can keep using this. That's why I left the tail so long, right? And follow the path. Try and do something similar on this side. Bring it all together. Let's see here. See, come over there, come here, come up here, see there. And I'm going to come around this one, come down this one, down here. And voila, we have created a closure for that gap that we have. I mean, that's usually something that really scares people when it comes to making mittens and gloves. They're just like, I don't like the hole at the fingers. And if you've ever paid attention to store-bought, like stretchy gloves or anything, there's always a little bit of a hole at the join for the thumb. And it's just because it's a pressure point, right? It's the separation of where the direction of the knitting changes. So for us, I'm never stressed about it because we have these tails that we have to weave in anyways. So we just use them to our advantage to close any hole that you might have. Everything looks really good now, right? See, do I have another tail? I have a tail on the, nope, that's the outside tail. It's just poking through there. I was like, what is that? That is this one here. There we go. So these are the ends I'm going to weave in, but that is my hole that was there. It's no longer there. Let me go ahead, weave in all my ends, and we'll take a look at what we have completed. Okay, I think that was my last tail, unless there's any on the other side. Nope, I don't see any. Oh, what does it look like? What does it look like? Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's put it on. Let's put it on. Look how great they look. Oh my gosh. They look so good. That thumb gusset is absolutely perfect. The size of my thumb, it feels really good around my thumb. It's not too tall up on my fingers. I mean, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. I mean, come on. How cute are those? They turned out so nice. And it doesn't matter if I have it on my right hand or my left hand. Remember, I told you the instructions work for both. So you don't have to have a right hand and left hand thumb gusset. It works for both. And if you love these, can I recommend you make this so that way you have a matching set? This here is the Falling Leaves Knit Mosaic Hat. It's a free pattern over at marleybird.com. Or if you purchase the VIP experience, you already have this pattern in the ad-free format right there inside of your Marley Birdhouse. But hopefully you love these mittens. I know I do. Now I have got to make the matching pair, which is one of the hardest parts. So that's what I'm going to leave you with here. As soon as you finish one mitten, go ahead and cast on and get started with your second one. So that way you don't get what's like called second sock syndrome or second mitten syndrome. You're going to get them done in no time. Anyways, that's it for me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see your mittens. Make sure you share with me on social media. Use hashtag Marley Made Me Do It or hashtag MMMDI. I'll find your picture and I'll smash your like button. I'm Marley Bird, and I'll talk to you again real soon.